Hello, welcome to another top 10. These are the top 10 worst storylines. Well, let's say worst stories slash crossover events of the past, let's say 30 years or so. I mean, yeah, there's been some bad stuff here and there. Um, yeah, that's simply how I put it. All right. Now, basically on this list, you will not the storylines you will not see on this list. Civil War. For the reason I don't think it's that bad, though other people think it's bad, some people think it's good, but it has its problems. I think it's a decently told story, despite having problems. Same thing with Disassembled. It's not that bad of a story. And House of M. House of M is not bad, because here's the thing, it did lead to actually pretty interesting storytelling over the course of the next 7 years before it getting wrapped up with this other storyline, which is also not going to be on this list. Avengers vs. X-Men and Access. Two storylines, in my honest opinion, are not really that bad. Like, in the case of Access, all you had to do in order to basically understand the whole process of Access was to read one ongoing series. That was Uncanny Avengers. Plus, of course, a few lead-ups to it, but it was a decently told story. And also, one of the good positive things about it is that it saved the Iron Man series. Because for a while, the series for a lot of people was sucking because of what Kieran Gillen had been doing to the series. Even though, yeah, it didn't really, let's say, I mean, yeah, it did lead to Iron Man being saved, but otherwise, though, not really much else. But I think it's a pretty decent story. And of course, Maximum Carnage. There is a reason why I am not putting it on this list. I think it's a good story. Yeah, it's long, 14 parts, but I've read storylines are longer. That's why it is not on this list, because I like it. Alright, now for my top 10. First, a dishonorable mention, which but didn't make the list. The Hunt for Xavier. Recently rereading this story, I can kind of see why the storyline is just so bad. Yeah, it is terrible. Oh, one other storyline does not make this list, Onslaught. Because I honestly don't feel as though it's that bad of a story. Yes, it does lead to crappy stuff afterwards, but I don't think it's a bad of a story. But anyways, back to Xavier, which Xavier is kind of like a follow-up what happened to him. Yeah, this storyline is just so bizarre. To say the least. Oh, and I forgot to add this to my list. Yeah. Yeah. This particular thing, I'm like, yeah, there was really no point to this story at all, just to bring back Xavier, but otherwise, yeah, the storyline is just so bad. The artwork is pretty decent for the story, but yeah, the storyline is bad. Another dishonorable mention is The Crossing. Considered to be, by anybody's worst list, basically one of the worst storylines ever told in comics. It led to some pointless stuff which was later retconned. And I've read a majority of the storyline, but I haven't fully finished it because there's a few one-shots I need to read. But otherwise, though, yeah, it is a really bad story. And I'm like, where the heck did this thing start or ending? And it did lead to some okay stuff for the Iron Man book. Probably the most dumbest thing of this entire storyline was the whole dumb retcon that Iron Man has been an agent of Kang for years, which makes no sense at all. And Heroes Return kind of undid it, which was kind of good. And got rid of the teenage Tony Stark. He was kind of annoying anyways. From the issues I read, yeah, he was annoying. One of the other problems with the story is that there's no place where it starts or ends. There's at no point in this entire storyline where there's like a part 1 or finale. That's one of the biggest problems. There's no, at any point in time, you basically are reading a storyline that you have no idea where it starts or ends. That's how bad it is. Okay, and another storyline, I kind of think this one's bad, but it's a storyline that crosses over. It's only a 4-part story called First Sign. It's the Avengers taking on the Zodiac. It's the storyline itself is completely pointless, and I keep thinking to myself, why did this have the crossover with? Why did this have to be a crossover between Avengers, Captain America, and Thor? Why? I honestly don't know why. Also, Operation Galactic Storm, not on the list because it's actually a pretty good story. I've not heard anything bad about this story, but I thought it was a pretty decent story. Okay? Now for the top 10. Number 10. Ultimatum. This one's not a surprise to see on this list, because for a lot of people, this particular story is just so bad. It's not so bad it's good. It's just plain bad. I mean, yeah, there's some good stuff in it, like some heroic sacrifices. One of the biggest problems with this series is, actually 2 real big problems with it. One, a lot of people die in this crossover. A lot of them really die for no reason at all. And also, one of the other problems with the storyline is all of its delays. Yeah, 5 issues coming out over the course of 9 months. I'm like, why the heck would you do that for? I mean, one thing I can say is a positive about Ultimatum is that it actually has really good artwork by David Finch. I'm sure that David Finch would probably not want to talk about this particular story. I mean, the only thing that's really kind of low for this entire series was the whole thing with the Wasp. Yeah, of the Blob being a cannibal and eating the Wasp's corpse. Yes, that was really disgusting. And I keep thinking, though, really, Finch? Why the heck did you put that in the book? Couldn't she, like, show it in shadow and not actually show it? It looks so disgusting. Yeah, it's a complete pointless thing. And killing off all these characters, some of whom actually are memorable characters in the Ultimate Universe. For some people, this is where the Ultimate Universe died, and they never bothered to pick up the book again. There were some good books afterwards, though Marvel, because all the humongous amount of hatred toward Ultimate, they tried to undo it. They were undoing stuff slowly from it. Like, first they brought back Thor, but they killed off Valkyrie. And another thing they undid from it was they retconned the whole thing with Doctor Doom because he was acting completely out of character, even for the Ultimate version. The writer of Ultimate FF retconned it that the Doctor Doom that showed up in Ultimates 3 and in Ultimatum was not the real Doctor Doom at all. It was actually Mary Storm. Sue Storm's mother was Doctor Doom in that storyline. So basically, she was one responsible for having Ultimates 3. Yeah. And plus, also, a future version of Sue Storm wanted to go back in time and undo Ultimatum. Yeah, but at least Marvel was trying to undo it because people hated it. But yeah, still a bad story. Right. Number 9 is for itself. Now, some might ask, why this one? It's a crossover event that happened 5 years ago. Why? It had maybe one consequence actually stuck. Because everything else has since been undone. The only thing it did lead into was really good storytelling in the pages of Invincible Iron Man. Like, during the course of the crossover, you saw the death of the Serpent character, who was basically the god of fear, the death of Bucky Barnes, and the death of Thor. And of course, let's do good stuff in Iron Man. That's the only thing that really stuck was the whole thing with Iron Man. But as for the whole thing with as for everything else, Well, they retcon Bucky's death, where apparently he survived having his mechanical arm ripped out, where apparently he got injected with like a sample of in the Infinity Formula and the Super Soldiers. Yeah, just a small little sample, and apparently that caused him to survive. And of course, Thor came back right after Fear itself. And also, 2 years ago, the God of Fear was resurrected. Okay. So, why is this bad? Because whenever you read the story, it is quite depressing. And also, one of the other big problems, it basically felt like a lot of the time they were going to lose. The only time they actually felt like they were going to win was like in the last couple issues. I mean, the series itself was like 6 issues long, and it was completely pointless anyways. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it did lead some stuff to happen in Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor, and a little bit in the Avengers books, but as for everything else, nope. It affected no other book. It should have, like, a lot of people say it should have been a cross between Avengers, Captain America, Iron, just between the Avenger books. That's what it should have been. That's why I listed number 9. It's slightly worse than Ultimatum. It's a complete story. Another one. Okay, number 8. Planet X, from Grant Morrison's run of New X-Men. This is the second to last story he wrote for his run for New X-Men before he left. Now, this particular story, one positive I can say about the story, it does have good artwork. Yes. Fear itself also had the same thing as well. But the major problem with the storyline is the inconsistency with Magneto, who is the main villain of the story. Yeah, it was revealed that Zorn, well, Magneto was posing as Zorn, and it turns out that, yeah, because of how Magneto was acting completely out of character in his entire story, like sending humans to incinerators. Yeah, there was like whole lines, and one of the Stanford Cuckoos called him out on this, and what did Magneto do? Killed her. Right there. It was later retconned, which is Zorn all along. But yeah, this storyline is just so terrible. And I can kind of see why that Grant Morrison I don't know why Grant Morrison had to do the story in the first place. I mean, he wanted this with Magneto? Really? I mean, yeah, the guy himself has written a lot of good stuff over the years, but this is probably by far his worst he's ever done. So yeah, number 8. Number 7, I've never actually read this one, but I have to put this on here, otherwise people will ask me why it's not here. But I have seen panels from this. Amazon's Attack. Ooh boy. This one is considered probably one of the most controversial ones ever to come out because of the bullcrap ending that caused a bunch of people to mail their comics back to DC because of how much they hated this thing. Okay, the book had many problems. I mean, yeah, it had pretty good artwork with it, but they had they had tie-ins. The tie-ins basically were more important than the actual main series, and also Cleopatra, who in before and after this was written to be completely in character. In this one, she's written to be completely out of character. And also, there's frequent sexism in the book, and one person like, oh yeah, the men are here. And of course, Wonder Woman prior to this was going through a lot of crap prior to this. Let's see. Prior to this story, the first writer she had, like after first, basically, the whole thing with Maxwell Lord, because we don't trust her. Then you had a writer who is a good writer, from what I've heard, but the book was suffering through delays because it takes a while to release it. And then you have Wonder Woman, written like she's come off the boat. And then, of course, you have this, which basically has like some issues ending with her just confronting her mother. And apparently, this is continued in the pages of Wonder Woman. I'm like, really? And also, she never uses her lasso truth on her mother at all, the entire storyline. And also, I've heard that in the entire storyline, the entire 6 issues, guess how many pages Wonder Woman, who was supposed to be the main focus of this entire thing, I've heard that she only appears for 29 pages. She spends a lot more time appearing in their own book than she does appearing in this an actual story. Also, the other main villain was Cersei, who has been a regular villain of Wonder Woman for years. And apparently she got killed in a Wonder Woman tie-in. Now, I've read the tie-ins. The one for Supergirl is actually... I actually thought the tie-ins were actually pretty good. It did lead to some pretty decent stuff. But... excuse me. Man, oh man, this story was so horrible. And of course, all the murder in basically, men. And of course, you have 2 characters who are supposed to be the rulers of Themyscira, basically standing around doing absolutely nothing. Now, they did choose a good writer for this. Now, this storyline happened 10 years ago. But, was it 10? No, actually, it was not 10. It was actually about 7 years ago the storyline happened. I think it did. Yeah, I think it did. But, yeah, I had to throw this on here simply because of how bad the story is. And I've seen panels of this, and I can see why this storyline is so bad. One of the reasons why is Athena basically saying us up a bunch of bullcrap that ticked a lot of people off, though its twist ending is something that leads into Countdown. Yes, I will talk about that later. Alright, moving on. Number 6. New 52, Future's End. One thing I gotta say about this particular weekly series is that it actually had really good artwork. One of the major problems with this particular storyline, now it did have consistent, the artwork was consistent, the storyline was consistent. One of the major problems with this particular this weekly series of how bad it is that certain stories only last for 2 pages, and then at times that certain stories people want to see more than a couple pages, they get cut off, and yeah, it's set 5 years in the future, and as for Batman Beyond, who was probably supposed to be the main focus character of the entire storyline, yeah, for a good chunk of it, he's absent. No explained reason, he's just absent. You have Shazam basically, well, Captain Marvel, basically being Superman, ignoring Lois Lane's advice about basically giving up being Superman. I mean, there was some good stuff with it. I mean, probably the most dumbest thing of the entire storyline was having Batwoman be a vampire. Yeah. Or how about Batman trying to clone himself? I'm like, what the heck was with that? Yeah, a lot of the Batman tie-ins basically dealt with him cloning himself for some strange reason. There were some that were good, some were bad. I mean, yeah, it did lead to the Batman Beyond series, which I think is a lot better. But that's the thing about this series. It's bad because of the writing. Well, all the characters written in character. The problem is there's 2 major problems with this thing. 1, the pacing, and 2, way too many storylines going on, and some of whom are really completely pointless in the grand scheme of things. Alright, moving on. Number 5. The Culling. This storyline I have read. Yes, I've read the majority of the 6 Amazon Attack. This one I kind of feel as though is definitely really bad. I mean, yeah, the storyline did have good artwork with it. One of the major problems with this storyline is the villain, where he's a Gary Stu villain, and it leads to a pretty decent series afterwards, but it's just, yeah, it's just so bad because, well, the annual had way too much red in it, and of course you had to put a purple filter in a lot of the stuff, but basically it, also there's continuity problems with it, and it doesn't lead to much with the the rest of the books that much. But this storyline is just completely pointless. And the main villain, you only get the villain's main backstory until like A number 3 of Teen Titans. That's really the whole thing. It's just a pointless storyline that really doesn't lead much into anything. Also caused one of the members of Teen Titans to disappear, Skitter, who disappears like that. Next, of course, number 4 is most of the Superman crossovers. The only ones I actually thought were really good was Hell on Earth and Return to Krypton. Those two I actually thought were really good. The rest of them, I'm like, what's the whole real point of these things? I mean, first you have Superman Doomed, which I've heard from a lot of people, even I've read it. I can see why this storyline is just bad. Because you have Superman becoming a version of Doomsday. And yeah, this is one of the things that led to Convergence, and no, Convergence is not number 1. But, and of course, a lot of this stuff is just, of course, this stuff was building other pages of Superman, Action Comics, and Superman Wonder Woman. Is that a lot of this stuff has been confusing, and it's just kind of pointless. Even Truth was kind of pointless as well, basically, when Superman lost all his power. And you have Superman running around in a t-shirt and jeans. This whole storyline that ran through all the Superman books, and that the villains were just really like one-dimensional. It's like DC didn't really had no idea when it comes to the Truth, and of course Savage Dawn is another one of them. Now, during the course of the story, it was actually a little bit better than Doom, but that's not saying much. One of the biggest criticisms for Savage Dawn is people were promised that the New 52 Superman would meet pre-New 52 Superman in issue 50. It was a complete lie. Yes. Basically, DC lied to their readers. I do not know why, but they did. It had a pretty okay conclusion, despite the fact that during the course of Truth storyline that Clark Kent was out of as Superman. But it did lead to a pretty good storyline afterwards. Final Days of Superman is a really good story, but Savage Dawn is just okay. But it is kind of bad, to say the least. So yeah, most of the Supers, not all of them, most of them. Alright, next. And this one's kind of predictable to see this one, number 3. The Clone Saga. Some of you might thought this might have been number 2, but yeah, the Clone Saga. A storyline that dragged on for 3 years. And for a lot of people, it's considered to be one of the worst crossovers of the 1990s. Yeah, the reason why it was dragged out so long was because Marvel's marketing department, who had control of all the storylines, they're the ones who dragged this thing out for so long. Despite the fact that it lost a bunch of readers, and the fact that some people could say this is probably one of the reasons why Marvel was near bankruptcy, because they dragged out the storyline for way too long. And some issues had really bad artwork. A lot of pointless things happening, inconsistent continuity, stuff like that. But yeah, this one was kind of predictable to be on the list. Alright. Number 2 is Countdown. Yes. I have read Countdown. And I can see why it's bad. That's why I put it number 2, because it's worse than Clone Saga, at least. That one had consistent tone with it. This one, the biggest problem with Countdown, see, there are several problems. 1, 51 artists. 2, good amount of writers, but the fact that the storyline was editorially mandated, the fact that the editor must have been completely, he must have, fell asleep throughout this whole entire thing was going on, and the fact you had inconsistent artwork, inconsistent writing, and stuff that led into other books that really went nowhere. Stuff that basically, this thing was supposed to lead into Final Crisis. No, that's not number one, because I actually don't think that's a bad of a story. But it had pointless deaths, plot twists that were completely nowhere, and whatever this great disaster thing was basically involving Ray Palmer. Yeah, basically he's missing his identity crisis. But yeah, this. Also, you have Superboy Prime, who appears in the series, and he's a whiny villain. Yeah, he whines. Like, the most quoted line of dialogue from the whole series. Like, there's 2 quoted lines. Like, three of them. Like, everything was better on my Earth, or you're ruining it, or this is probably the most laughably really bad dialogue to Super Prime said. And he says is the Monarch, who this is one of the 2 times DC tried to fix something that happened with Armageddon 2000, which is no. I haven't read the whole thing, so that's why it's on the list. Where he says, I'll kill you to death. Yeah. And the fact that also, the Question appeared to be completely different than she did at the start of the storyline. Yeah, I kind of remember this, where she wore this golden mask instead of wearing like the actual outfit. Yeah, her outfit was completely different at the start of the storyline. And Batwoman was written to be kind of out of character because the whole thing with the Trickster and Pied Piper. It just was a mess of a story. And I keep thinking, though, for a story that was editorially driven, the editor, well, I have heard stories about this. Like, apparently, Dan DiDio, one of the co-publishers of DC Comics now, he hated 52 so much. So he had this series, which is editorially mandated, but apparently, whatever editor he probably assigned to be the editor of this entire series was probably out on vacation most of the time. And that could explain why I have all the inconsistencies of this entire storyline. And also, this had a tie-in with the whole Death of New Gods and Jimmy Olsen getting the powers of the New Gods, him becoming Mr. Action, also him finding out that Clark Kent is Superman. Of course, Mr. Action was never brought up again after that. Yeah. So, yeah, completely bad. It didn't offend me like some... It wasn't offensive of a series, but yeah, it was bad. Now, this one, some people... This is quite predictable. Be my number one. But as a Spider-Man fan, I had to put this number one. This and its follow-up storyline. One More Day. The only thing I liked about the story was the artwork. It was actually pretty decent artwork. But this storyline, ooh boy. One More Day. Me along with a bunch of other people, even though I'm not whining about the story, this storyline is offensive. Because the fact that Joe Quesada, who I do have some respect for the guy, not a lot of it, some, this thing is considered to be worse than the Clone Saga. Yes, worse than that piece of crap. Because this storyline not only offends Spider-Man fans, but also anybody who was a comic book fan or even a fan of video games. Yeah, that's how bad this thing is. And of course the whole deal with the devil thing. Yeah, that was dumb. Really dumb. And also, and this is probably one of the most dumbest things about this whole storyline, is that it's impossible to heal a bullet wound in the Marvel Universe. And I'm thinking, no, it is not. It is not that hard. The only reason why it was written that way was so that this marriage could be retconned. Also, from what I've heard, J. Michael Straczynski did not want this retcon to happen. It was Quesada who forced it. And of course, the one moment in time, the follow-up story really ticked a lot of people off, including me. Where, in this particular storyline, we found out about the whole what Mary Jane told Mephisto, that somehow, like Nighthammer's loved ones, like somehow she remembers the deal and Peter doesn't. Also, where the marriage kind of happened but didn't, where apparently Peter missed the wedding because a fat man fell on him. I'm like, really? Why? Like, one more day. The only thing good about the story is the artwork. And of course, the whole thing with his identity being revealed during Civil War. Yeah, they undid that by having Doctor Strange basically wipe everybody's memory of it. Now, that I don't have a problem with. The whole marriage thing being ruined, like Peter missing the wedding because a fat man fell on him. That was dumb. So, yeah. That's it. Well, that's it for this episode. That's it for this top 10. Please be sure, if you have your own top 10 worst storylines, please put it in the comments down below, or you can do a video response to this one. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and give this video a like. And I'll see you next time whenever I get a chance to do my next video. Okay? So until then, see you there. Bye.